Hello everybody. So we're going to talk about HTTP parameters. So when we're making a call to a REST endpoint, sometimes we want to pass additional parameters in. We've actually been passing parameters and you may not really be realizing that that's what you're doing. So in this session we're going to talk about this a little bit. So often we want to pass multiple parameters to a REST endpoint. So far we've done this. And so if it said person/1. Now in reality we've actually passed a parameter there and we'll show you what that really looks like. This is what our web API code looks like for this. We've got a person get and with a parameter called ID that's a long, and this parameter is named ID. You see it there, and then the value that we're passing is the 1. Now in reality this is what it really looks like down below. This is a more traditional way of passing this, and probably a good idea to be explicit like this is and show where the actual parameters are. You'll notice the question mark is the difference between the endpoint and the parameters, and in the example above it's the / that does that. And the other thing that you'll notice in that example is a name-value pair, the name being ID and the value being 1. So more on HTTP parameters, basically as I just said, it's a URI followed by a question mark, followed by name value pairs that are separated by an ampersand if you have more than one name value pair. And in addition to separating the name value pairs by the question mark, you separate the name and the value by an equal sign, like this. So here's an example of some URI, and we have two parameters, parameter 1 and parameter 2. Parameter 1 it gets the value of 3, parameter 2 gets the value of test, and the ampersand separates the two name value pairs. The question mark separates the endpoint from the actual parameter list. Now, if you need to include spaces in your value, your name value pairs, your value of the name value pair, or you need to maybe put in an ampersand and a question mark. Well, if you try to do that like this, it won't work. You'll get an error because this is not valid URI syntax, so this isn't going to work. So what we have to do is encode this, and to encode it, it looks like this. So there's a website out there. There's several websites out there. I found this one that seems to work pretty good. It's called meyerweb.com/eric/tools deencoder. And so if we take our parameter list like this and we hit the encode, it will put those characters in. So what these are actually, the percent followed by the 2-digit number is actually the hexadecimal code for the ASCII character. So in this case it's a space, so an ASCII 20 actually, or a hexadecimal 20 is an ASCII space if you go look that up in the ASCII table, okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and build our REST endpoint so that it will do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to overload get. We have two gets right now. We have a get that takes no parameters. I've got a breakpoint set on that. You'll see why here in just a minute. And then I've got a get that takes a long as a parameter. We're going to copy that code and change it. So we are going to just copy and paste, and we're going to create one that does it by name instead of by number. So we're going to have a last name parameter and a first name parameter. Now in general, you should know that looking up people in a database through their first and last name is usually not the best idea because you could have multiple last name, first name combinations out there. So the ID is really the primary key is the way you want to go. So this is just an example. And we'll go ahead and just put a little example here so that anyone using this would know how to do this. So maybe it's something like that. So we're going to use two strings, last name and first name. And we are going to pass those through. We're going to overload our person persistence as well. passing last name and first name, and it says it can't find that. So we'll save that and we'll go add one of those, and I'm going to copy this get person. Now it would be better to write a kind of a general purpose method that would you could call from these two methods to get by the ID and get by the first and last name, but in the interest of time we won't do that. Again, kind of a best programming practice to do that. And so let's put this in, and even though I named these the same, they could be named anything, as you know. Okay, so all of this code is the same. The only difference is our actual select statement, because instead of doing it by ID, we do have a last name column out there, so we're going to say last name, and we have to enclose, in SQL, we have to enclose the value of a string in single quotes. So we will do last name, and then just working on syntax here with a SQL and that will do it. If I haven't mistyped something, that should take care of it. So that'll form our SQL. Everything else is the same. This is why you could reuse this code and make this simpler so you don't have so much code to maintain in here. Okay? So that's it. That's the two methods. So we changed our person persistence. We added a get person that takes two parameters, last name and first name, and then we just changed our SQL statement. And then in the person controller, we added a new method called getting a person with the parameters of last name and first name. Okay. Now I have put a breakpoint here on this get, because it turns out what happens is if you pass bad parameters in, it reverts back to this get. And so we'll watch how this works. We'll go ahead and run this. Assuming I haven't made any mistakes, this will compile and run. Now, it's this example is a result of someone who watched a video and wanted to know how to use parameters. So I just want to thank that person for watching and for asking the question, and I'd encourage you to do the same. If you have some particular topic you'd like me to cover, I'd be more than happy to take a shot at that. JavaScript clients are one that people have requested. Another one is an authentication filter, which will be an extension of what we did with our API key filter that we added, our API key message. So let's go ahead and see how this works. We have this running now. So if we just go get persons, first of all, it'll stop on this breakpoint. We'll hit continue, and it returns back. I've got two records in the database right now, and so let's go ahead. And actually, I had that wrong, so let's do that again. You'll notice how the parameter was messed up and it still went ahead and returned the data. Now, if I do ID equals 2, this is the way we can call this by ID. You'll see it brings back the one row. And if I put in a non-existent ID, I get a 404 not found. So that's our ID. So let's go ahead and do last name equals Smith, ampersand for the next name value pair, first name equals Robert, and send that. And it says we don't have any of those, so let's try this again and let's see if I mistype something. Robert Jones is who we're looking for, not Robert Smith. So we'll use Robert Jones and send that. And now it has actually still not gotten it back. So we'll see what we've done wrong here. So we have our two parameters, last name and first name. Go ahead and set a breakpoint here and just see what we're doing. And I may have an error in my code, so we'll do a little debugging here. We'll step into this code. Probably I've got a typo in my SQL statement. So let's see if last name So last name is Jones, first name is Robert. So that all looks good. And I do have a mistake here in my SQL. So you might see that, but I didn't include the name of the field. You probably caught that if you were paying attention. So that's why we are throwing the error. So last name equals the last name and first name equals whatever's in those quotes. So that's why we have debuggers, and that's why they're great tools to find mistakes that we make. So hopefully you caught that when I first typed it. So we'll get this running. Okay, and hopefully here we go. Again, thanks for watching, and again, please feel free to send, you can just put comments on the videos to ask for suggestions. I do have a website coming that's going to have source code for these examples. I'm working on that right now as well. So, all right, let's try that again. Can take the breakpoint off now and let this run. I think it'll do what we want it to. Let's try that again. We timed out. Okay, so so it brought back our person. Now, one question is, does the order of the parameters matter? So let's just do a little, well, first of all, let's tweak one of these parameter names. So what happens if we put an uppercase L there? Now that still works, so parameter case sensitivity doesn't seem to matter, but typos, like if I put an extra letter in there, what you'll notice it did, it can't find an endpoint definition that matches those two parameter names. And so it's just kind of throws its hands up and uses get. And that will return back everybody. So what about the order of the parameters? What happens if I take these parameters out of order? Well, it turns out that that is perfectly fine. If I switch order, it'll still go and find the right person. So that's a quick introduction to how you can use parameters. You can see that with ASP.NET Web API, it's very easy. You just build your methods up, and the one thing you want to watch for is making sure that you've updated your documentation properly here. If you don't do that, for example, if I were to have a capital L here, let's stop this. If I had a capital L in my parameter name here, you'll notice I get this little green underline, and that's because it can't match these two. So it's important that you keep that in sync, and then everybody's happy. All right, so thanks for watching. Hopefully this has been useful to you, and please continue to watch.